going to take you somewhere today that might surprise you. Because when most folks hear the name of this place, they picture something from a black and white movie: cell blocks, gas chamber, hangings in the yard. The kind of prison that shows up in the songs Johnny Cash sang. It's called San Quentin. It sits right on the water, on Point San Quentin, looking out across the bay at San Francisco. $1 million view. Most expensive piece of prison real estate in the country. And for over 170 years, it was the place where California sent the men nobody wanted to deal with. It opened in 1854. That makes it the oldest prison in California, one of the oldest in the country. It was built because the state had too many prisoners and was holding them on actual ships floating in the bay. Yeah, that's where it started. Floatin' jails. And they finally said, okay, we gotta put them somewhere on land. So they built San Quentin. And then proceeded to spend the next century and a half making it famous for all the wrong reasons. Let me walk you through what made San Quentin what it became. First, the killing. Between 1893 and 1942, California's preferred way to handle a death sentence was the hangman's rope. They hung 215 men at San Quentin. The inmates called the hanging yard the arena. Then, in 1938, they upgraded. That's the word the state used, upgraded, to a gas chamber. They tested it on a pig first. Took the pig 34 minutes to die. They went ahead and used it on people anyway, for decades. And after they put the gas chamber in, death row at San Quentin became the biggest in the entire Western Hemisphere. At its peak in 2015, there were nearly 700 men there waiting to die. Cells the size of a parking spot. 20 to 24 hours a day locked down. Bigger death row population than Florida and Texas combined. California has more death sentences than any other state, by a long way. And almost all of them ended up in one building at San Quentin. Some of the names you know. Charles Manson did time there. So did Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Scott Peterson, the Hillside Strangler, the Scorecard Killer. The list of serial killers and cult leaders and gang bosses who pass through this place reads like a true crime encyclopedia. For 170 years, if you committed the worst crime in California, you came to San Quentin. That's the building we talking about. Now let me tell you what life there actually looked like, inside. The cells were small, 4 feet by 10 feet, about the size of a parking space, like I said. The chow hall was strictly segregated by race, not by official rule, but by the gang code the inmates themselves enforced. You sat with your people or you sat alone. And sitting alone was its own death sentence. The yard was carved up by territory. The Aryan Brotherhood ran a piece. The Black Guerrilla family ran a piece. The Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia each had their territory. These weren't just street gangs. Inside, they were governments. They decided what shower you used, what phone you used, who you could be seen talking to. And if you broke one of their rules, they handled it. Not the guards. Them. The violence has always been part of the place. In August 1971, an inmate named George Jackson, a Black Panther organizer doing time, tried to escape, and the whole prison erupted. 3 guards and 3 inmates died in one day. That's just the famous one. The day-to-day violence, the shankings, the beatdowns, the people killed quietly in their cells. That don't make the news. In 2010, a child murderer named Edward Schaefer was killed with what they call a bone crusher, a weapon made from pieces of a bed frame. That kind of thing happens more than the public sees. And then COVID hit, and San Quentin became one of the worst prison outbreaks in the entire country. Over 1,000 inmates tested positive. Dozens died. The buildings were old, the ventilation was old, men were packed in close. The virus tore through the place. There's footage of inmates begging for help and staying up all night listening to other men die in their cells. Lawsuits followed. The state caught real criticism for how they handled it, and rightly so. So that's the worst version of San Quentin. The hangings, the gas chamber, the biggest death row on this side of the planet. The gangs, the riots, the bone crushers, the COVID outbreak. That's what the name means to most people who know the name. Now here's where the story gets weird. Because as of right now, San Quentin ain't even San Quentin no more. In 2023, the governor of California announced they were turning the whole place into something different. They renamed it. It's now officially called San Quentin Rehabilitation Center. They closed down death row. Every single man who was condemned to die there has been moved out. 598 men shipped to other prisons across the state. The last few are being transferred out as we speak, just waiting on medical clearance to go. They tore the gas chamber down. They built an 81,000 square foot learning center on the property. Classrooms, workshops, coding programs, reentry training. The state wants San Quentin to be a national model for rehabilitation, more like a college campus than a prison. That's a real change. I'm not going to sit here and act like it ain't. They emptied out the largest death row in the Western Hemisphere. That's huge. The men who would have spent the rest of their lives in a parking spot cell are now in general population at other prisons. Some of them working jobs, getting visits, eating in chow halls. They ain't out. They still doing life. But they live in more like human beings than they was before. And the programs at San Quentin itself are real. The Last Mile teaches inmates to code. Some men have walked out and got real jobs in tech. There's a college program. There's hospice volunteers. Guys doing life, taking care of dying inmates. The GRIP program, Guiding Rage into Power, teaches anger management and emotional regulation. It works for some folks. It really does. But here's what I want you to hold on to. The name changed. The death row emptied. The learning center got built. None of that fixes the part of the system that put people in San Quentin in the first place. California still arrests more people than it should. The death penalty is still on the books. They just declared a moratorium on executions, but the sentences themselves are still real. 598 men are still condemned to die. They just ain't all in one building no more. The cities and counties where those condemned men got transferred, like Chino, where dozens went, are saying the receive-in prisons can't safely house them. So you got people protesting on the other side too, saying, you just moved the problem, you didn't solve it. And San Quentin itself, for all the new branding, is still 105% over capacity. Still has gangs, still has the segregated chow hall, still has the same old buildings with the same old plumbing. You can put a learning center on the side, and you can move the worst men out, and you can change the name on the sign at the front gate. But you can't undo 170 years of what that place was. The walls still know. So when somebody asks me, is San Quentin the worst prison in America? I gotta tell them the honest answer. It used to be. For a long time, by a lot of measures, it was. The biggest death row, the most famous killers, the gas chamber, the hangings, the COVID outbreak, all of it. Now, it's something weirder. It's a place trying to be the model and the monster at the same time. The state is showing it off as proof they're reforming. And it might be. But the old San Quentin is still in there. In the walls, in the cells, in the men who lived through the worst of it before the new sign went up. I'll keep doing these. There's more places to walk through. But I wanted you to see San Quentin, because it's the one place in this series that's actually trying to become something else. Whether it works, whether a building that hung men for 50 years can really become a college campus, we ain't gonna know for a long time. That's all I got. Be safe out there. And remember, they can change the name, but the building remembers.